Ever felt like there's a side of you try to keep locked down?
Mm.
Maybe a sudden surge of irritation you instantly regret, or perhaps a secret ambition you'd never speak aloud.
Yeah, that feeling is pretty universal, I think.
Today, we're plunging into this hidden realm, what the pioneering psychologist Carl Jung famously called the shadow self.
A truly foundational concept in Jung's work. Getting a handle on it is really key to unlocking his entire model of the human psyche.
Absolutely. So in this deep dive, our aim is to go beyond just defining the shadow. We want to explore Jung's core ideas and, maybe more importantly, reveal why grappling with this unseen part of ourselves is so vital for, well, genuine personal growth and a deeper sense of well-being.
Right, we'll be looking at Jung's whole architecture of the mind, how the shadow actually takes form within us, its surprising characteristics, and yeah, it's not all bad.
Oh, that's interesting.
Definitely. And we'll cover the real dangers of ignoring it, the journey of integration, and, the profound benefits that can follow.
So our mission here is to equip you, our listener, with a clear and compelling understanding of the shadow self. We want to offer insights that resonate personally, maybe give you a fresh perspective on your own inner landscape, and illuminate a path toward greater psychological wholeness.
Sounds good. Where should we start? Jung himself.
Let's do that. Let's unpack this, starting with the man himself, Carl Jung. Swiss psychiatrist, initially a colleague of Freud's, but then he really charted his own very distinct course in understanding the human mind.
Yeah, he did. Jung saw the psyche as this dynamic system, lots of interconnected layers. Think of it like an iceberg, maybe.
Okay.
The ego, that's the tip, our conscious awareness. Then below that, you've got the personal unconscious that holds our individual memories, repressed experiences, that kind of thing.
Right.
And deeper still is the collective unconscious. Jung saw this as a universal reservoir of human experience, filled with what he called archetypes, these primal patterns of behavior and imagery.
And somewhere in all that.
Exactly. Nestled within this complex structure is the shadow.
And it's this shadow self that's our focus today. So in Jung's own terms, what exactly is this shadow? What's the sort of core definition?
Well, in essence, the shadow self is the unconscious container for all those aspects of ourselves, both what we see as negative and maybe surprisingly positive stuff too, that we've pushed out of our conscious awareness.
So the things we deny.
The parts we deny, repress, or just don't want to own up to. Jung famously put it as the thing a person has no wish to be. It's basically the sum total of everything our conscious ego doesn't identify with or accept as me.
So it's like the psychological attic where we just shove all the bits of ourselves we find embarrassing or unacceptable.
That's a great analogy, yeah. And this collection, it isn't random. The shadow forms through some very specific processes, starting really early in our lives.
Okay, tell us more about that. How do these rejected parts end up in the shadow? What's the mechanism there?
Well, primary driver is social conditioning. From our families, our communities, our cultures, we're constantly getting messages, often unspoken, about what's okay and what's not.
Like certain emotions, maybe?
Exactly. Certain emotions, like intense anger or specific behaviors, might be frowned upon. So we learn to suppress them, learn they're not okay, and eventually they just sink into the unconscious.
Right, okay. So if you grow up where, say, showing any kind of aggression is a big no-no, you'll probably learn to bury those feelings deep down.
Precisely. And these early learned suppressions, they contribute significantly to what Jung called the personal shadow, those individual experiences and traits we've basically disowned.
Okay.
And then our own internal moral compass plays a huge role too. When certain characteristics clash with the image we want to project or the societal norms we've accepted as good, we tend to judge and reject those traits in ourselves.
Yeah.
That just feeds the shadow even more.
You also mentioned something called a collective shadow. How's that different from the personal one?
Right. The collective shadow operates on a much bigger scale. It embodies the shared, often darker aspects of human nature that a whole society or group tends to reject. And then what happens? They project it onto other groups or individuals.
Ah, okay. So like historical scapegoating, maybe? Or ingrained cultural biases?
Exactly. Those can be seen as manifestations of the collective shadow at work.
So the shadow isn't just my personal bin of unwanted personality traits. It has this broader shared dimension too.
It does. And here's a really crucial insight. While the shadow definitely contains what we see as negative impulses, think anger, envy, greed, maybe laziness, it also acts as a repository for untapped potential.
Untapped potential. Like what?
It can hold really positive qualities.
Yeah.
Things like raw creativity, genuine spontaneity, the capacity for deep vulnerability, even healthy assertiveness, surprising resilience aspects of ourselves we might have learned to suppress for some reason.
That seems counterintuitive. Why would we bury positive traits?
Well, maybe within your family, being assertive was seen as aggressive, like you said earlier. Or maybe showing vulnerability was considered weak in your social circles.
I see.
So these positive qualities, just because they didn't fit our conscious self-image or the external expectations we felt, they get lumped into the shadow, right alongside the so-called negative ones. Jung himself pointed out that the unconscious man does not consist only of morally reprehensible tendencies, but also displays a number of good qualities, like instincts, insights, creative impulses, and so on.
So someone who always tries to be agreeable might have a shadow just brimming with unexpressed assertiveness. And even someone society labels as bad might have surprising pockets of kindness or empathy locked away in their shadow. That's a fascinating twist.
It really is. And a primary way this unacknowledged shadow messes with our lives is through projection.
Projection. Yeah, we hear that term a lot in psychology. How does it specifically relate to the shadow self?
Well, when we stay unaware of our own shadow traits, we have this strong tendency to just project them outward onto the people around us.
So we see our own stuff in them.
Essentially, yeah. We see and judge others really harshly for the very qualities we dislike in ourselves but haven't recognized or accepted yet.
Yeah.
It's like a blind spot. We see the flaw so clearly in someone else, but we're completely blind to it in us.
Can you give us a sort of concrete example of how that might play out?
Okay, imagine someone who deeply represses their own feelings of inadequacy. They might become hypercritical of other people, constantly pointing out their flaws and shortcomings.
Right.
That harsh judgment is often just a projection of their own unacknowledged insecurities. The intensity of our judgment of another person often mirrors the strength of that same trait within our own shadow. What really, really irritates us in someone else often reflects something we're unwilling to face in ourselves.
Wow, that's a powerful mirror to hold up. I can definitely think of times when my strong reactions to someone else's behavior might have said more about me than them.
It's a universal human thing, really.
Yeah.
And this dynamic, it's a common theme in storytelling, too. In books and movies, the antagonist often embodies the protagonist's projected shadow, those disowned parts of the self the hero has to face and integrate to become whole.
So the shadow isn't just a static collection of buried traits, then. It has its own agency, its own way of influencing our lives.
Absolutely. The shadow has this autonomous quality. When we actively ignore it or suppress it, it doesn't just disappear.
It pushes back.
Kind of. It operates independently in the unconscious and can surface in unexpected, sometimes disruptive ways. It might manifest in our dreams, influence irrational behaviors, or erupt as these sudden, intense emotional outbursts when our conscious control slips.
Okay, so we've got this hidden dimension inside us. It contains both undesirable stuff and surprisingly positive elements. It's shaped by our experiences, societal pressures, and it can even warp how we see other people. So why is it so critical that we actually engage with this shadow? What are the real downsides of just, pretending it doesn't exist?
Jung believed that consciously confronting and integrating the shadow is absolutely fundamental to achieving psychological wholeness.